Alright, this video is being made for a gentleman on the OTS Beekeeping Facebook page. The first thing you got to do when you do OTS is you have to find the queen and isolate her. So here's a frame. Got lucky on this hive. She was on the second frame that I pulled out. So I pulled her out. You can see this frame does have some brood on it. Has a decent amount of honey. And I'm putting it in this 5-frame nuke box. I already pulled this first frame out that I pulled out of the parent hive. It was my first frame. It was originally along the edge. I just slid some frames over after I found the queen on this frame. Put these both in this hive right here, this 5-frame nuke box. Alright, second thing you want to do, when you find the queen and put her in the box, again, she was originally on that second frame in. I got a third frame in there that has some capped brood on it, some honey, and some open brood. You need some good frames that have capped brood on them. This is a frame totally loaded with capped brood, and it's kind of darker, so it should be hatching here in the next few days. Plenty of potentially nurse bees crawling around on this. See the other side, there's some capped brood on it that's emerging, but there's a lot of open spaces for her to lay also. So you need, like they say, probably at least 3 frames that's got capped brood on it, and that's what I like to do. Alright, here's my 5-frame nuke setup with the queen originally being on this frame here. I have 3 frames of brood in there. There's an empty drawn frame that's mostly empty. Got a few eggs in it, but the majority of the frame's empty. And then there's a frame that's got plenty of honey and some pollen on it. That queen came from this spot right here in my apiary. Make sure she's got plenty of bees in there. And I'm going to leave it in this location and put the lid on it. Now any field bees that might be in there, we'll go back to this parent hive, the parent hive location in my apiary here. But I made sure I got 3 frames of older looking brood. There's plenty of bees on the frames, so there should be plenty enough bees that will be in that hive and that nuke to sustain it. Any of the field bees that go back to the parent hive, it shouldn't matter. A lot of guys talk about the 3-mile rule or the 3 feet rule. You can do that if you're moving a parent hive. If I was to move this parent hive, there would be a lot of bees left in this area that wouldn't know where to go. So that's why you have to move it more than 3 miles. But I'm not doing that. I'm just leaving the parent hive in its original location. And the older queen, sorry about that, the older queen is coming to this spot, and she'll be just fine. Like I say, any field bees that are here are going to move over to the new spot, and it won't matter. There's plenty of nurse bees in there to sustain that hive. There's plenty of resources in there to sustain her. Now here is a frame that I'm going to notch. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not once I get this uploaded, but there's multiple cells. The majority of this frame is new, like 1 and 2 day old larvae. There's some larvae on here that's a little bit older, and there's still some eggs on here. But this is going to be a hard frame to notch because this, if you look at this frame, if I can zoom out here, come on, it's a newer frame, so the wax is going to be real soft. And again, I apologize for the video quality on this, but this was a last minute thing made to try and help a guy out on Facebook. So here is the cell that I'm going to notch. I'm just going to go, if it's new comb, if you do a little bit of a zigzag pattern as you're going in, and then fold your hive tool down, kind of give it a little bit of a jiggle, wiggle back and forth. Otherwise you'll pull the wax right off. So you can see there's a few eggs in there, but there's some real young larvae in there also. I'm going to do this probably 3 or 4 times on this frame. Again, I just do a little bit of a wiggle back and forth as I cut down in. Fold it down at a 45-degree angle. This is new comb, so it's really hard to do. It wants to stick to my hive tool. And there's another notch. And that's how you notch with Mel Discicone's OTS system. Again, I'll do this several more times on this frame. I'm sorry my phone's not wanting to focus. I don't know if it's the light. Seems like when I get in the shade it does a little better. I apologize for that. But that is 2 notches on that frame. Alright, here's the notchings complete. The 2 frames that have the arrows on it are the frames that I notched. Altogether I got about 7 notches in there. If this was springtime and I was trying to notch to make more nukes, I probably would have tried to notch 4 or 5 frames total so that I could further split more. But this is, we're approaching mid-August, so I'm just notching this to requeen, to raise a young queen to go into winter. So I just notched 2 frames. And I try to keep, when you notch, try to keep the core of your brood nest together. So these 3 frames here have brood. These frames have a little bit of brood, but mostly eggs, and there's some brood on that frame, but the bees haven't distributed back across them yet. And I've got some new frames on the outside of the brood nest. And then you can see all the writing I have on there. I like to date the frames. But again, as you can see where the arrows are, I like to mark where I notch, so when I come back in 7 days from now and inspect them and knock out any excess queen cells, I'll know exactly where I did it. Here's the top box. There's 3 frames here in the middle that still have brood on them. I've located them right above these frames here. Again, trying to keep the core of the brood nest all together. I got some new frames checkerboarded in there. But again, I like to try to keep the core of that brood nest together so that all the nurse bees can stay in one location and take care of making those new queens. So to back up, this was the parent hive that I pulled the queen from. This is actually a new hive. It's a swarm that I had gotten the first part of July, and that's just grown really well. So that's why I went ahead and pulled the queen now, so I could get another set of her genetics out. And here's the nuke with the original queen in it. You can see it's only about 10 feet away. Probably, I've left the lid off of it. Most of the field bees by now have probably flown out, if there was any, and have flown back. So this is going to be probably what will be in this hive. There might be a few more bees that fly out and go back, but the majority of these bees right here are probably nurse bees and will stay here. Parent hive location. There's the second deep. So I'll put this all back together. I'll come back 7 days from now and inspect the queen cells. Any of the ones that they made on their own that look really runny and really dinky, I'll knock off. I'll try to save, I like to save 3 or 4 of the best looking queen cells and leave them. Some guys advocate just leaving 1 or 2, but I'm just a little too nervous to do that because I've knocked queen cells off before that I thought were dandies, but they were just too many queen cells, so I was trying to follow that rule. And you knock that queen cell off and there's nothing in there, or it's a dead little runny queen. So I leave 3 or 4, and hopefully out of those 3 or 4 nice queen cells, there's going to be 1 queen that's going to be a great queen, and she can fight it out and hopefully get mated correctly. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully I covered everything you were asking in your original OTS Facebook post. If not, we can continue to ask questions and hopefully we can get you the information you need. Again, apologize for this video quality. First time I've done this for Facebook, so hopefully this turns out alright.